The second flight of the Space Transportation System, or STS-2 mission, 5-day, 83 Earth orbit mission aboard the spaceship Columbia, was designed to verify vehicle performance and to establish its safety and reliability prior to undertaking operational missions. The first cargo was carried aboard the orbiter on this mission, and the remote manipulator system was to be tested in Earth orbit by the astronaut crew.
After its successful first flight, Columbia was ferried back to Kennedy Space Center. Shuttle Flight 1 brought many firsts. Shuttle Flight 2 would bring another. The first time in the history of space flight that an attempt would be made to launch the same spacecraft a second time.
The commander for Columbia's second orbital test flight is 49-year-old astronaut Joe Engle. A native of Abilene, Kansas, Engle has a long career as a test pilot and technically earned his first astronaut wings while flying the rocket-powered X-15 along the fringes of space. Engle really likes to fly most anything, including World War II fighter aircraft. He also spends time with son John as they work together on their vintage Army observation plane.
It's certainly a tremendous responsibility, but it's a tremendous opportunity as well. It's an opportunity to put to use a long background of flight test experience and flight test, getting ready to do what I consider to be just about the ultimate in flight testing on this mission. It's a chance to really pay back to all the people who put the effort into giving the opportunities for Dick and I to go fly the flight.
Joe Engle is no stranger to shuttle landings. Twice in 1977, he and Dick Truly glided the Enterprise to near-perfect touchdowns.
And during that series of flights, we were able to gain experience on the systems, maturity on the systems, the hydraulic and communications and electrical systems on the airplane. And we also had a chance to get an early look at the handling qualities of the shuttle. And we're able to make some minor adjustments to the flight control system in the landing phase of the program. So we gained experience, operational experience in knowing how to handle and how to fly and what some of the limitations of the airplane were. And we also gained a lot as far as the systems maturity on the Space Shuttle. John and Cripp demonstrated to all of us that the basic performance of all of the systems and the subsystems, including the tile, were very sound. The design is very sound, and for the most part, all the systems performed as well, and in most cases, performed better than anticipated in their flight.
So there's no worry about flying what some people have referred to as a used car or a used truck.
No.
It's like the old ad, isn't it? Flown only once?
Well, I think it's maybe a little like taking a car that is built to run for a couple 100,000 miles. Perhaps you're a little more apprehensive about the first time you take it out in case something was overlooked. Once it's been driven around once and you get the bugs out of it, then you have more confidence in it. And that's kind of the state that we're in with the shuttle. It's built to fly 100 flights, and we're on the second flight. We know that the systems are going to work now. Things are happening so fast. The things that we need to check and monitor are coming so regularly, and our concentration is just entirely and totally on monitoring the systems, making sure and trying to identify any anomaly that may be starting to generate early. That there really isn't the time to think about, am I going to get scared? I think there's a real big desire not to make any mistakes then, and that takes your full attention, checking and rechecking all of the functions that we'll be doing in the cockpit.
Just as he did during the approach and landing tests, astronaut Richard Truly, 43, from Fayette, Mississippi, will serve as pilot for the second flight of Columbia, sharing the workload with Joe Engle.
Flight will be about twice as long as STS-1. It'll be just over 5 days in length. And the on-orbit activities will be essentially to do a series of flight test objectives that are required to declare the spaceship Columbia operational after a few of these initial orbital flight tests.
While there are no plans for the crew to go outside the shuttle orbiter, extravehicular activity procedures, or EVAs as they are called, are practiced underwater at the Johnson Space Center. Dick Truly explains.
The underwater work is necessary to train for the EVA, the contingency EVA that we might have to do. And we have to do the underwater work because the only other way to simulate zero gravity on Earth is in our KC-135-0G airplane, and in that airplane the exposure to zero gravity is only 30 to 40 seconds at a time. Underwater, even though it's not a perfect simulation of zero gravity, you can stay down for hours at a time and thereby get a tremendous amount of work done.
We practice coming out of the vehicle in a contingency situation and escaping from the tower, getting clear of the tower. We've got these baskets and slide wires that we are able to get into and cut the restraining cable, and the basket slides down to a personnel carrier that we can then get in and drive clear of the pad.
The emergency escape training that we have done at the Cape, just like John and Crip, is one of those things. And it's just a big scramble to get out in case you had an emergency. We're confident we know how to do it. We've practiced it, and you know, if we had to do it, we'd scramble. Obviously, the purpose of the shuttle is to provide a cheaper, more economical, and easier system to take payloads up and down. And just as an indication of the fact that we think that we have built the right spacecraft for the right time, our payload bay is booked up for the next several years on payloads that are already paid for and in production, and we could. If we had more orbiters today, I'm sure that the payloads would fill up the payload bay just about as fast as we could turn the vehicle around.
Columbia was ferried back to Kennedy Space Center. There, the process of turnaround was set in motion. There were system checkouts, minor tile repairs and replacements.
Columbia will be launched with more than just a two-man crew aboard. For the first time, the shuttle will carry a working payload into space. The cargo is OSTA-1, a series of experiments developed by NASA's Office of Space and Terrestrial Applications and mounted on a special aluminum platform supplied by the European Space Agency. These are Earth resources experiments designed to exploit the shuttle's vantage point in space. New techniques of observing Earth's surface and atmosphere should give scientists better ways to survey food supplies, water sources, oil and mineral deposits, and thunderstorm activity. A 50-foot-long Canadian-built mechanical arm called the Remote Manipulator System, or RMS for short, has been installed along the side of the Space Shuttle Columbia's payload bay. It was built by Spar Aerospace Limited of Toronto under contract to the National Research Council of Canada. At NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, engineers have been putting the arm through its paces underwater, where they can also come close to the weightless conditions that exist in space. The remote manipulator system eventually will be used to remove payloads and place them in orbit. It can also retrieve satellites that have malfunctioned, repair them on the spot, or return them to Earth. Astronaut Sally Ride, who has been working closely with the designers and builders of the remote manipulator system, will be the CAPCOM, or capsule communicator, when the crew begins operating the arm in space.
In early August, Columbia was moved over to the Vehicle Assembly Building. Here it was mated to 2 new solid rocket boosters and an external fuel tank. 3 weeks later, it was rolled to the launch pad once again. During the next 3 weeks, launch preparation crews worked in 3 shifts, trying to meet the early October launch date. All had gone smoothly up to the point of loading the hypergolic fuels. That process had barely begun when nitrogen tetroxide was discovered spilling onto the orbiter. Approximately 15 to 20 gallons of the oxidizer had spilled down the side of the vehicle and into the propellant tank compartment of the nose section. It had also seeped between the orbiter's thermal protection system tiles and dissolved the bond holding the tiles on the spacecraft. Eventually, over 350 had to be removed. Cause of the spill was failure of a quick disconnect valve to close. The valve could not close because of concentrations of iron nitrate in the head and hardening of lubrication in that area. With Columbia still on the launch pad, workers were able to gain access inside the nose compartment and replace soaked thermal blankets. They were also able to reach the soaked tiles. Therefore, it would not be necessary to move back to the orbiter processing facility for repairs. The tiles were put through a very speedy decontamination process to remove the oxidizer. Within 3 weeks after the spill, all 378 tiles had been removed, decontaminated, and rebonded. Launch was rescheduled for November 4th.
We have had a go for the flight crew to go into the suiting room and suit up for their trip out to the pad and into orbit for 5 days. The crew is on its way out now, accompanied by the security people. They're waiting for the people who come out to see them off. John Young, the commander on the first shuttle flight, taking the ride with them out to the pad. The trip out to the pad takes approximately 10 minutes by the Astrovan. T-minus 35 seconds. We're just a few seconds away from switching control to the computer sequencer in the orbiter. T-minus 31 seconds, and we have held at the T-minus 31 second point. Launch Director George Page has just recommended that we go into our scrub turnaround procedure.
Only 31 seconds away from ignition, the launch computer halted the countdown. The pressure in the liquid oxygen tank was below the predetermined limit necessary for liftoff. Meanwhile, controllers were also becoming increasingly concerned about the high oil pressure in 2 of the 3 auxiliary power units. After analyzing this problem further, they decided to scrub the launch for the day.
I'm trying to get a readout in another 2 or 3 hours as to whether we've got the thing under control or not. But we'll let you know during the day here as to what our status is. And there is no reason to believe that we won't get this tidied up before we pick up the count tonight at 10 o'clock.
Do the crew have any preference against going on Friday the 13th?
I haven't discussed that with them, so I can't honestly say. I would doubt that they do.
The APUs are vital to Columbia's safe ascent and entry, for steering the engines during liftoff, controlling the aero surfaces during landing, and for lowering the landing gear. It was suspected that oil pressure rose in the units because the filters were clogged. The problem would have to be solved before another launch. Analysis revealed that a wax-like substance had formed in the oil to clog the filters. The substance was created by a chemical reaction between the oil and hydrazine fuel. The hydrazine seeped into the gearbox over the 7-month period since the APUs were last used and contaminated the oil. Although many thought technicians simply forgot to change the oil, normal maintenance procedures did not require it. Indeed, a key factor in shuttle's reusability is quick turnaround with minimum maintenance. The APUs were flushed with new lube oil. New filters were installed and fresh oil was added. Working on a very tight schedule, ground crews completed the work within a week. The shuttle was again ready to be launched. 1981, November 12th to be exact, Richard Truly's 44th birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Richard. Happy birthday to you. Go anywhere.
It is mandatory that we have return customers. To ensure your satisfaction, we have thoroughly checked your engines, filled your fuel tanks, changed your tires, checked your generators and electrical system, touched up your paint and vehicle finish, toppled up your heating and cooling systems, replaced your brake shoes, checked your hydraulic system for leaks and performance, thoroughly checked your steering system, checked your lights and instrumentation gauges, installed some scientific games to eliminate boredom, cleaned your windshield, packed some lunches, positioned your vehicle on the driveway for a safe trip. Please have a safe, enjoyable, and trouble-free trip. We like to have repeat customers. Signed, Big George and Company.
At T-minus 2 hours and 5 minutes, the countdown went into a scheduled hold, and the astronauts began suiting up for their mission.
Joe Engle and Dick Truly get into their suits, which they will use during the ascent portion of their flight into orbit. They are in the suiting room, and the biomedical sensors have been attached to their body. The suit technicians are in the process of zipping them into the place into their suits and checking out the various parts of the spacesuit to ensure that they are properly fitted to them and that the sensor wires go to the proper connection and that the various the gloves and the helmet lock into place. During the period when they're getting suited, they do sit in reclining chairs, which provides a lot more comfort than they will find when they get into the orbiter seats.
This is Shuttle Launch Control, T-minus 2 hours, 5 minutes hold, and the crew is just leaving the suiting room and moving to the elevators to go down to the ground floor and back out to the pad once again. They're being accompanied by George Abbey and also by John Young, who was the commander of the first mission. Joe Engle and Dick Truly now in the elevator on their way down to the ground floor.
NASA has these cameras, these secret trick cameras that look right through your hair on the back of your head. I noticed that.
Joe Engle and Dick Truly waving to the crowd as they get into the Astro van. A final wave from Dick Truly. John Young joins them, George Abbey, and the other members who are accompanying them out to the pad.
The countdown was picked up after the astronauts arrived at the launch pad. The crew proceeded to the White Room and began the orbiter ingress procedures.
The flight crew has reached the clean room and has been given permission to enter the orbiter. Commander Dick Truly shook everybody's hand as they reached the White Room. Joe Engle is putting on his helmet at the present time. Dick Truly standing by to put on his as well.
Go ahead with the Delta test. Stopping, we'll do it on 1 minutes. Right.
T-minus 7 minutes, and there goes retraction of the crew access arm. This is the walkway attached to the service structure and used by the crew to walk across to the orbiter. The crew has been advised to lower their helmet visors, and at T-minus 6 minutes, we'll begin preparations for starting of the auxiliary power unit. The APUs are turbine devices fueled by decomposing hydrazine liquid, which provides hydraulic power to change the angle of the engines, to operate the aerodynamic surfaces, engine valves, and during landing, operate the landing gear. Coming up on the T-minus 6 minute point in our countdown.
That's in work.
T-minus 6 minutes and counting. The pilot Dick Truly has begun the APU pre-start activity.
Your pre-start is complete.
And it is complete. The development flight instrumentation, which measures stresses on the orbiter during flight, have been turned on. Recorders stop for playback after landing. T-minus 5 minutes, 40 seconds, and counting. T-minus 5 minutes, 30 seconds. And pilot Dick Truly has signified the auxiliary power units are ready to be started. T-minus 5 minutes, 15 seconds, and counting.
Thousands of news media personnel from throughout the world assembled at the press site located 3 miles from the launch pad. Cameras, recorders, and communication equipment were checked and tested. The countdown for the shuttle vehicle was conducted in Firing Room 1 of the Complex 39 Launch Control Center by a government industry team of about 200. Several thousand invited guests arrived at the VIP viewing site located on the south side of the vehicle assembly building. Thousands of other visitors, primarily families and friends of Space Center workers, had converged on the other designated viewing sites at the spaceport. Several 100,000 viewers crowded into every available site along the riversides, causeways, and seashore near Kennedy Space Center. In the Launch Control Center, the consoles and computers of the automated processing system constantly checked every functional system aboard the space vehicle. The ground launch sequencer took over the countdown. The sequencer is a set of automated computer programs which perform the final series of launch events in a specified sequence. Under the program, the 3 orbiter engines were scheduled to ignite in sequence at T-minus 7 seconds and throttle up to 90% thrust in 3 seconds. At that point, the ignition sequence of the 2 solid fuel boosters was to begin. As the boosters ignited, 8 hold-down bolts were to be blown. Liftoff was scheduled for T0. Several seconds into the flight, vehicle pitchover and a 180-degree roll program were scheduled to begin.
Coming up on 10, T-minus 10, 9. We have go for main engine start. We have main engine start. Minus 3, 2, 1.
Here's a beautiful view of the Florida coastline. It's taken out in my right window.
Space Shuttle, and the Space Shuttle has cleared the tower.
Off we go. There's the roll maneuver.
Houston now controlling. Mission control confirms roll maneuver
Through a little cloud deck. There's the highway going up the east coast of Florida, and you can see both the coastline and the inland waterway. A pretty ignition sequence. It was not very noisy and very smooth.
But boy, I'll tell you, when those solids lit, you really knew that something had hit you. There was it was a really a very big increase in vibration in the vehicle. In fact, kind of a clattering, a metallic sound within the bird, just like you're driving over, like John said, driving over a real rough road, and that's really just about how it felt. But it sure was a nice, solid push getting off the pad. Roll maneuver was spectacular. Boy, that thing really whips around.
And that was really some kind of ride. And as Joe said, it just seemed like a rattling of the whole spacecraft when the solids were burning.
Wasn't so bad that you couldn't read checklists or read any of the displays or reach any of the switches.
Mark, 1 minute, 20 seconds. Columbia now 9 nautical miles in altitude, 6 nautical miles downrange. Velocity now reading 3,000 feet per second.
Notice the sky getting dark.
Mark, 1 minute, 35 seconds. Columbia now 14 nautical miles in altitude, 10 nautical miles downrange.
Houston, you can expect any BAP, C&W.
1 minute, 45 seconds. Coming up on negative seats where altitude's too high for ejection seat.
Negative seats. Roger, negative seats.
Mark, 1 minute, 55 seconds. Columbia now 21 nautical miles in altitude, 18 nautical miles downrange. Velocity now reading.
This is a beautiful view of separation. You can see the three main engines lit, and we're done with separation. Just like John and Crip, the windows were completely enveloped in flame.
Within 2 minutes after liftoff, shuttle had reached an altitude of 25 miles. The solid rocket boosters were jettisoned and began their descent to the ocean. The boosters were recovered for reuse on a future shuttle mission.
Mark, 3 minutes, 55 seconds. Columbia now 58 nautical miles in altitude, 112 nautical miles downrange. Velocity now reading 7,900 feet per second. 4 minutes, 8 seconds.
Okay, let's get a return status here. Fido, go. Booster, go. Prop, go. Ecom, we're go. Eagle, go. Okay, we're go to proceed past negative return.
Mark, negative return. Roger that, sounds good.
7 minutes, 43 seconds. G-forces building for Engle and Truly now, coming up to 3 Gs. Columbia now 63 nautical miles in altitude, 562 nautical miles downrange. Mark, 8 minutes.
Houston, you're go at 8.
Columbia's main engine's slowly being throttled back now. Should be throttled at 65% at 6 seconds before main engine cutoff. Columbia now 63 nautical miles in altitude, 645 nautical miles downrange. Velocity now reading 24,000 feet per second. Eight minutes, 28 seconds. Standing by now for main engine cutoff.
Okay, Houston, we got a good bingo. Roger, we copy, Columbia.
Confirmed shutdown. Columbia now returned to space, not yet returned to orbit. Standing by now for external tank separation.
This is the external tank separation at the end of the main engine, Miko. You could see a washer coming out there. This cable that you see flapping around on the right-hand side of the picture is a part of the baggy installation that protects the opening there at the fitting, at the tank fitting, and was really of no consequence, although I think, like Dick and I, when we first saw it, we'd have been a little concerned about that thing flapping around out there, not knowing that it was or was not supposed to be there. You can see the tank tumbling also, and you notice the scorched bottom end of the tank, and as it tumbles around just at the end here, you'll be able to see where the solids were not shielding it. The flame pattern started lapping back up on the side of the tank there.
Columbia, Houston, your go for nominal ohms 1 for APU shutdown on time.
Okay, Dan, and we're maneuvering to attitude now.
Roger. 9 minutes 44 seconds. Columbia now maneuvering to ohms 1 burn attitude using the two 6,000-pound thrust engines. Ohms 1 will be posi grade, moving Columbia forward and higher on her flight path, placing Columbia in orbit.
The external fuel tank was jettisoned, and the spaceship Columbia reached its designated orbital altitude. The second mission of America's reusable space transportation system was underway.
We ought to say a word for the recovery teams that recovered the solid rocket motors out of the ocean. The seas were terribly rough. At any rate, the seas were really rough the few days after the launch, and those teams really did a super job to get the solid rocket motors out of the ocean.
All orbital maneuvering system burns were successful, putting Columbia into a 138-mile orbit around the Earth.
Meanwhile, we're about 6.5 minutes away from reacquiring Columbia through Indian Ocean Station. 3 major events must occur in the next few hours for Engle and Truly aboard Columbia to stay on orbit. First, the onboard computer system must be reloaded from Ops 1 to Ops 2. This is needed to align the inertial platforms. Also, one computer will be loaded with Ops 3, the entry program, and put to sleep, taken offline. Second, the payload bay doors must be opened to provide cooling through the radiators to Columbia. The flash evaporator has a lifetime of several hours. Third, at least 2 of the 3 fuel cells must be purged with hydrogen and oxygen to rid the impurities. The fuel cells can survive only so many hours without purging. In the mission, they'll be purged about every 8 hours.
The payload bay doors were opened to deploy the heat-dissipating radiators and expose the OSTA experiments. So began the many tasks of the 5-day mission that lay ahead.
There's the arm there stowed in the lower right and the OSTA experiment in the center of the payload bay. This was at night, so the light you're seeing is reflections from the lights that were on inside the payload bay, and there's the light shafting across the ohms pod and up the vertical stabilizer.
Center of the payload bay here is the OSTA pallet, and in the upper center, moving to the upper center of the picture now, is the SIR-A antenna, one of the major experiments on the OSTA pallet.
SIR-A is a synthetic aperture radar. This was really a beautiful sight, seeing the experiments in the payload bay and then looking up there and seeing the Earth.
The first package of scientific instruments to be flown on shuttle from NASA's Office of Space and Terrestrial Applications was designated OSTA-1. At an altitude of 160 miles, worldwide data was obtained, proving that sensors previously used on costly individual satellites could now be flown in groups on shuttle, along with low-cost commercial-grade sensors that could only be flown on aircraft before. This will greatly reduce the cost of such experimentation in the future, putting it within reach of low-budget researchers. The ability to map Earth from space also demonstrated the potential for these instruments to map other planets, yet unexplored, even through dense cloud cover, as the Shuttle Imaging Radar experiment was able to do. The Shuttle Imaging Radar instrument used side-looking radar to create map-like images of the Earth's surface, showing relief. When supplemented with previously recorded Landsat satellite data, which could identify rocks and vegetation types, the composite revealed geological structures of a type which could possibly contain valuable mineral deposits, such as oil.
Here's one of the experiments, the nighttime optical survey of lightning that was meant to study lightning patterns and from orbit to look at different patterns, not only from cloud to cloud, but within the cloud itself. And from the meteorology standpoint, there are just some spectacular clouds to be seen once you realize what's happening down there.
1 hour 40 minutes mission elapsed time. That was Capcom Dan Brandenstein reporting that Mission Control was only able to command the aft camera on board. Therefore, we will have no color television of the payload bay door operations. Shuttle Control Houston, a 1 hour 42 minutes mission elapsed time. We have approximately 4 minutes and 20 seconds remaining on this stateside pass.
Not long after achieving orbit, at about 2 hours, 27 minutes mission elapsed time, the crew reported a high pH level, indicating alkalinity in one of Columbia's 3 fuel cells. The cells, which produce electricity and water for the spacecraft and crew, are essential for operating the many systems on board. Flight controllers, having dealt with almost every conceivable problem during flight simulations, immediately began working to find a real-time solution to this problem. But meanwhile, the cell's capacity to generate electricity continued to deteriorate. At about 5 hours mission elapsed time, it was decided to take the fuel cell offline and safe it, drain it of all its energy. This would prevent a potentially dangerous reaction from occurring that could damage the spacecraft.
And it is literally dead, cannot be restarted. So the rest of STS-2 will be accomplished on 2 fuel cells.
But according to a mission rule made pre-flight, the failure of a fuel cell would reduce the 125-hour nominal mission to a 54-hour minimum mission. A mission management meeting was held to decide whether to enforce or override the rule, whether to come home after 54 hours or stay up for the full duration.
Pass, once you get info to look at the RMS elbow camera and tell us when you can do that if you get it locked up.
Okay, we'll do that. We've got a picture of the flag back, and we'll coordinate with ENCO.
Super.
Columbia, Houston, we've got the elbow camera.
Okay. What's the...
Hi, Mom. The way we'd like to do that is have you turn cabin fan A on, let us verify that it's on, and then we'll give you a go to cycle B off.
Okay, sure enough.
And Columbia, we would like to get the cabin fans changed as soon as possible.
Good. A is on, Sally. And we can hear it crank up on board.
Okay, stand by. Okay, we see fan A on, and we'd like you to take Bravo off now.
Okay, Bravo's off.
Okay, and be advised that we're looking at a great picture from, looks like, camera delta of the arm and the Earth.
Good show. Hey, very good.
And we're looking inside the cabin now. Looks like you're having some trouble with your cab.
Roger that. Just like always, Sally. You're smiling?
Cheese.
Shuttle control, both crewmen were photographing the Earth through the overhead windows. The cab that Sally Ride referred to as the crew activity plan.
RMS was really smooth. It, in all the modes we tested it, it was just no surprises from the simulator, and we did a maneuver, both of us did a maneuver up to the grapple fixture. As you know, we did not do a grapple on this flight. The STS-2 Crew is going to do that, but I predict that they are going to like the way that the remote manipulator system maneuvers in space.
I think Dick is getting ready to cradle the arm now. In this sequence, you'll see how he straightens the arm out, get it into position to bring it down into to cradle it.
We did. Actually, it was very, very smooth. And also, you can see the saddles that the arm sits in there in this picture. They actually roll out from at the first of flight, and they were kind of rough when we tested them down at the Cape, but they were very smooth in zero-G. This is what we call the direct mode of the RMS, but the single mode is the mode that eventually will be used operationally, and this just proved that there are alternate ways to cradle.
Because of the shortened mission, Dick ended up doing just about all the RMS work, and the only thing I was doing there was running cameras and making them go to the right places to get the right views of the...
Johnson Space Center Director Christopher Kraft explained why the decision was finally made to shorten the mission.
Well, we certainly don't have any other problems on board. I think that we think it's the prudent thing to do at this point in our test program. We think we can really get everything out of the mission that we have planned with the exception of time. So we just felt from a more prudent position, we had thought it out very carefully pre-flight, that was the best thing for us to do.
At the end of the second day, Mission Control had a special visitor.
Joe, Dick, this is Ronald Reagan.
Hello, Mr. President.
Let me just say, I'm sure you know how proud everyone down here is, and how this whole nation, I'm sure the world, but certainly America, has got its eyes and its heart on you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. We're awfully honored that we've got the opportunity to take part in this. We certainly do appreciate you taking the trouble to show all the people working on the Space Shuttle how much you care, and it makes us mighty proud.
Well, I care, and again, God bless you both, and all of us here are watching with great pride.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you.
Just like all the people that have gone before us, we found that one of the big problems was housekeeping and managing books, and pencils would float by, and you'd go down the middeck and there'd be a camera out in the middle, or anything that we hadn't tucked away we'd find quickly. We didn't have much time during the mission to get planned television and planned photography inside the spacecraft. As a matter of fact, of the 850 pictures of the Earth that we took, I'm sure that 800 of them were taken after we put Houston to bed. But one thing we did do one night was, it's all in how you look at it. One thing we did do was Joe set up a TV camera down in the middeck, and we just let it run for a while we ate our meal and did some things, and we just thought we'd show you how much fun it is in zero-G, and just as easy. I found in this particular scene that I was just tall enough so that my feet could touch the ceiling and my head could just touch that water tank, and I could stay there all day, upside down or right side up, whichever. Notice the checklist out there in the middle of the mid-deck. Now this is the part that sure beats working for a living, I'll tell you. It's like a couple of porpoises or something swimming around.
With all the Priority 1 objectives completed, the crew was ready to come home. Entry and landing would be their last test.
For 7 minutes, over.
Roger, and the port door is coming closed, and I want to at least get it close here and stop, and then we can talk.
Okay, that sounds good, Richard.
KL operators, assume all of you have checked the configuration. I'd like to come around the horn and get a go-no-go for the deorbit burn. Fido?
Go.
Guidance.
Go. He's still maneuvering with attitude.
Understand. DPS?
We're go, flight.
Command?
Go.
Ecom?
Go.
Eagle?
Go.
GNC?
Go.
Prop?
Go.
Booster?
Go.
Surgeon?
Go.
Inco?
Go.
Ops? FAO?
Go.
Payload?
Go.
And Arrow?
Go.
Okay, Capcom?
Columbia, Houston, we have a go for the deorbit burn. 3 minutes remaining in this pass.
Super. Thank you, Rick.
The landing, like the first mission, would be at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Entry on this mission would test the vehicle's response to maneuvers not performed before.
And the roll reversals will still be as updated.
And Columbia, Houston, the roll reversals will still be as brief. There will be no significant effect on that early turn on the first roll reversal. Over.
Roger, understand. Thanks, Rick.
The first maneuver, done at the beginning of the communications blackout, was executed at Mach 24, the fastest speed at which manual control had ever been exercised in winged aerodynamic flight. Close to 30 maneuvers took place as the shuttle sliced through the atmosphere at speeds from Mach 26 down to Mach 11. At about Mach 10.5, Columbia was expected to regain communications with mission control.
Columbia, Houston, through Buckhorn, configure AOS. You're about 25 miles south of ground track. Your nav is good. Your energy is good. We'd like you to check your TACAN, MLS, and radar altimeters on. Over.
Range 200 miles. Coming out of 125,000. Crossing the coast about now.
PTR2 at Mach 58, mark.
Roger, we show you now out of 120,000 feet, 5.6 miles.
Okay, up to the figure flight steps.
Roger.
Columbia down over the San Joaquin Valley now, 9 minutes away from landing. 115,000 feet, Mach 5.3, range 148 miles.
Okay, roll reversal right at 4
Roger.
That was a big one, and it was completed by 4:05.
Okay, we concur.
Speed brake coming in now.
Rick, your little gurgle there, if you could say again, the ports are coming out now, 3.4, and say again your last.
Positive seats.
Remember now, I said 28 32.
Positive seats, Columbia now.
PTR 4, mark.
Roger. Roger. Everything's looking right on the money there, Joe, and we have a wind update for you and a weather update. You've got a very thin layer at 25,000. The winds
Airborne are as briefed and on the ground at 220, 18 knots, gusting to 24. Altimeter's 30.07. You got 60 miles viz underneath. Over.
Hey, good. Sounds like a good old rainy day.
Yes, sir. Out of 68,000. Showing Engle continuing to fly the test maneuvers.
The first visual sighting of Columbia was aided by plumes from reaction control system jets.
Roger. Safe vector transfer. Pass to VFS.
Okay, thank you very much.
At Edwards, we're watching. You notice these white puffs coming out. We were not attempting to right Burma shave, although Dick and I talked about it beforehand. These are exhaust plumes from the reaction control jets, the yaw jets, responding to the inputs of some of the latter program test inputs, the data maneuvers that we were flying to determine the derivatives of the vehicle, the lateral directional derivatives of the vehicle.
22 miles. Columbia, Houston, we show you intercepting the hack, and a reminder you've got the strong winds out of the west. Now out of 38,000 feet.
Okay, thank you, Rick. And we got a little bit of PTO 0 in, but not too much.
Roger.
And Rick, the maneuvers have been going very good. The bird is real solid. Good, solid bird all the way.
Well, we love hearing it.
And chase, we're showing 290 at 20,000. Okay, we're about to be with you at 19.
Check body flap to manual.
Roger, body flap not manual.
280 knots at 18,000 feet. Miles range at 13,000.
Speed brakes come close.
You're below the glide slope. You have a go for auto land.
Okay, Rick. Thank you, sir.
Incidentally, the airplane, throughout the entire entry and landing phase, to the best we could tell, was just as solid as a rock. It had no overshoot, no oscillations that we feared we might see in some areas. Just a very steady, solid vehicle all the way down.
Check speed brake auto.
Okay, speed brake, body flap, auto, everything's auto. Thank you.
Final approach, you can see the chase plane out to the side there. We did switch runways. We were originally going to land on runway 15 and take advantage of a crosswind so that we could evaluate what the crosswind characteristics of the orbiter were as we landed. The winds actually picked up a little more than what we had planned to try on at least our first crosswind attempt, so we switched back around to runway 23 at Edwards and landed essentially into the wind with practically no crosswind component, with a pretty healthy headwind component.
250 knots.
Okay, 2,500 feet, speed brakes are closed. We're at 270 knots. Chase concurs. Columbia is clear land, link at 23, wind 2108. Okay. Gears coming. 3 down. 100, 50, 30, 20, 10, 5, 3, touchdown. Nose gear 15.
Columbia has very little tile damage after this flight, which we think is really marvelous for a vehicle this size and on only the second flight. That's not going to be a major problem in the turnaround. My main chore during the landing was to lower the landing gear, which incidentally went down right on time.
We rolled out about 7,000 feet. We did do a braking test on rollout, which was really our final flight test objective, if you will. And the braking test went well. We I think demonstrated, of course, we had the headwind, so we stopped shorter than we would have with no wind, but we did stop the vehicle in 7,000 feet of ground roll. I think demonstrating that certainly the bird is capable of landing on our 15,000 feet and probably our 10,000 foot designated runways with no problem.
Okay, Joe, it's a great day for the Ace Moving Company. Welcome home. Over to Steve Nagel now.
Columbia, Houston, welcome home. We need landing gear 1 ISO valve.
And I say we did light braking too. We certainly didn't go to maximum braking on the maximum application on the brakes. We maintained between 7 and 8 feet a second deceleration rate.
When we landed, I felt perfectly normal except for the 350-pound person sitting on my shoulders. Seriously, that was the only sensation that I really had when we got back on Earth, was just really felt heavy, but after we walked around the bird here for 5 minutes, that went away, and it was then we were back in 1G. I told Dr. Kraft I thought that the only thing that's really bad about the orbiter is when you put 1G in it.
Although this second shuttle flight only lasted 2.5 of the 5.5 days planned, it did answer some formidable questions. The orbiter is truly a reusable spacecraft that can be launched again and again. Instruments in the payload bay can map Earth's resources on a global scale. And the remote manipulator system has met this flight's test objectives. All high-priority objectives were accomplished, and 90% of the overall objectives were completed, even though this was a test vehicle on a developmental flight cut short 71 hours. The completion of this flight marks the halfway point in the shuttle flight test program. Columbia's third flight, a mission of up to 7 days' duration, is scheduled for the spring of 1982. The problems encountered so far are not unexpected during developmental flight testing. Indeed, it is only through such testing that confidence in the vehicle, its systems, and its flying characteristics can be built. The Columbia is a totally new concept in manned spaceflight. It needs very conservative, very comprehensive testing before it can become operational, making access to space something it's never been before. Routine.